to another edition of TradCatKnight special guest exclusive podcast right here on the TradCatKnight.org website. Folks, today is September the 5th, 2018, and I hope you all are having a very wonderful and blessed day. And we are very honored today to be back on a man who frequents the podcast on a regular, Gill Broussard, independent researcher. You can get over to his work not only on YouTube. I'll allow Gill to get out all the shameless self-promotion time, anywhere throughout the podcast, but specifically at the end. But he's been covering Planet 7X for quite some time. And listen, we're seeing an awful lot on the Earth changes fronts in terms of, Yellowstone having all these types of anomalies, new fault line in Los Angeles. We even have a peak in meteor showers, I believe, this September, which I got up on the website. We've got, we just recently had a 6.5 quake off of Oregon, which is a little concerning, obviously. So much to discuss with Gill Broussard. We were very unfortunate we weren't able to get video for this one, folks, so we're hoping next month to get a nice video segment with some visual presentation by Gill, so look for that. I believe we scheduled October the 8th, so look for that. Gill, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir, and I know you really wanted to lead things off by talking about this earthquake swarm that we've had over the past month in the Kansas, Oklahoma area. Tell us the significance behind it as we get started here.
Yes, we've been seeing a definite uptick on these indicators that tells us that probably having something major happening, but also not just the West Coast, but a unusual amount of minor earthquakes in Oklahoma, Kansas, and northern Texas. It's extreme, the amount, and that's too far away from Madras. There's something else that's going on there. Either that's a new volcano that's coming up from underneath, a large one, or something else is happening there.
What about fracking? You don't think it's fracking at all? Could you imagine if there was a volcano out in that area? That would be really frightening.
Well, there's something taking place, but it's not fracking. Fracking will give you a couple extra because it simply lubricates what was going to happen anyway. That's basically what it does. It doesn't create an earthquake. It simply adds lubrication for it to either happen earlier or make smaller ones out of bigger ones. One of the two. But it doesn't create a quake. There's something that, we have thousands of them. If you look at what the USGS is showing.
Right.
There's something going on, and I don't know what exactly it is, but it's drastic. And it's showing more activity there or equal to the activity as the West Coast. So, and hardly anyone is talking about it. So there's something there. There's something happening there.
Now, as crazy as that might sound, what was it? Just last year, we had that Princeton or Rutgers professor indicating that we've got that new super volcano up in the Northeast, which shocked a lot of people. I haven't seen too many earthquakes, though, up in that area. I'm not sure if what you're seeing on your end, but my goodness, I'm right there with you. That's awfully bizarre to see as many earthquakes as we have in the Kansas, Oklahoma area. And again, many will write off it's fracking, but I don't know. As Gill says, maybe it is a new volcano.
Well, another big concern is that there's some people label volcano right next to Mexico City as a super volcano. There's a particular news reporter that told me that his information that he's receiving is that the chambers underneath have merged. There used to be 3 chambers, and they're merged into like a super one large chamber, and that would classify it as possibly a super volcano. Well, there's 30 million people living in Mexico City. It's right there on the side of them. Where would they go? Guess where? Straight to the border over here. You'd have to get considerable distance away from such a large, whoever survived, if it exploded or if it just rumbled slowly. We don't know if, you never know with a volcano, whether or not it'll go quickly or slowly. So
now, I just mentioned at the top of the broadcast was just last week or around a week's time period, 6.5 off of the coast of Oregon. As far as I saw, there was no tsunami mentioned. But guess what? I'm just checking the USGS today. 6.0 in Bandon, Oregon, just happening, it looks like in the past 10 hours or so with a follow-up quake. This is very concerning along that Cascadia rising zone, which, as you know, Gill, FEMA has been running all kinds of drills for quite some time. It doesn't seem like we have an awful lot time left before just like the worst of the worst will be happening along that entire West Coast, not just the Cascadia Rising area, but the Los Angeles area, which, as I mentioned at the top as well, a new fault line discovered. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing on the West Coast. We have an awful lot of listeners here from the West Coast. Should they be getting out of Dodge?
I definitely would not want to be living there. Matter of fact, there's very few. There's hardly any places left in the western part of the U.S. that's not showing heavy activity. If you look at some of the USGS findings, that they're not exactly spreading around, but they do make these maps. We have our own particular problems here in the U.S. that are magnified. One of the things that I've, getting back to the Planet X deal, to show the progression of effects. Okay, in the early 1800s, late, just after the Civil War era, astronomers there in about 1890 or so had noticed that the outer planets were being warped by unknown gravity. Then modern scientists saw that also, and then they went ahead and did Pioneer and Voyager probes, looking for it, which they basically found it in 1992, December, because that's when they went silent. And then the Vatican went online 1993. Well, we saw the orbits of comets being warped inside our solar system in the mid 90s. Okay. Then that progressed to our modern time. Within the last 10 years or more, we got asteroids in our backyard over here, basically around Earth, that are being warped by unknown gravity, or magnetic fields is actually what it is. Their orbits are being warped. If you have any idea how many asteroids are actually circling around our orbit, it's frightening. Think of it like a massive beehive swarming.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how many there is out there. They're in the thousands, hundreds of thousands. And if they're being warped, that means they can run into each other. And that's one of the main reasons why you're seeing so many fireballs come into Earth's atmosphere, because they used to miss us. Now they're not. And scientists, astronomers, are considerably worried about this, and they're on a massive search to see if there's any asteroids that's going to be any large ones that would be heading towards Earth or not.
Yeah, it's not just the Vatican too, right? We've got Australia, Project Wormwood, their own government. That's what they've labeled it. You can go to their website. I mean, you simply type in Project Wormwood, and you'll find Australia, obviously looking at the skies. And you got the Lucifer Project out there on Mount Graham, which the Vatican has a hand in. I mean, they are keeping track of what's going on in the sky. And Father Malachi Martin alluded to this. And in conjunction, everything that you said, Gill, I just posted this today. 10 significant meteor showers this month in September. Alpha, Gamma, September, Epsilon, Perseids. I mean, I'm not going to name all of them, but it's quite a few. I don't think I've seen this many for a September time period. Any significance?
Yeah, those are only the large ones they're telling you about. They're not that they pick up on their radar. But yeah, these we're living under threatening times right now. We could have some much larger ones that could come in, take out a city, take out a forest, just like Tunguska in Russia happened. Majority of New York City, if that exact event happened over New York City, it would take the majority of the city out. That's how big it was. Keep in mind, Malachi Martin made the comment after the Vatican went online in 1993. In 1996, he made this statement: knowing of what's going on in space and what's approaching us,
yes,
could be of great importance in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, he's talking as an astronomer. Well, if you take 1996, add 10 years to that, that's 2006. Well, from my software models that I share to people for them to take a look at, if you reverse the the model to 2006, as he was saying, guess where that places our object? It would have been November 5th of 2006. It would have been at Neptune's orbit, where optical telescopes should have been able to see it. We haven't seen it yet, but he's telling us we should have seen it. Okay, so unless something is interfering purposely with us seeing this, he's telling us right there that that's who he's talking to. It's not the infrared, it's observatories, but to the optical telescopes that they would see. And this matches the model we're seeing. And as this thing cuts half of the distance between the sun and where it is prior, when it cuts, you're looking at doubling the effects. Okay, on what we're seeing, and that's what we're seeing on the growth of volcanic activity and earthquake. It's an exponential growth.
Yes, fireballs, yeah, as well. Everything's increasing, and I want to get your take and analysis. What's up with the theory that the government has some type of technology where they could potentially hide Planet X in the sky? Do you buy this theory that maybe we could be seeing it by now, but we can't? I don't know. I've heard this from a few people. What do you make of this thesis that they have technology that they're hiding stuff in the skies? Let's say.
Right now, think of it like we see the smoke, we feel the heat, but we can't see the fire. Okay, we got all of the effects to our outer planets as well as Earth and Sun and everything. Everything's being affected in our solar system. They're all showing effects. I could go through the whole list of them. We have an inbound object. We have we have ancient artifacts of the past that shows us this. We have recent documents, this is recent according to astronomy, 960 years ago, where they documented the orbital path of it. And we were able to plot it today in modern times. We have a real object. That's proven. It's how to deal with it. Well, they can't tell the public. And so have they figured a way? Well, if you look at the Washington Post in the 1980s, they stated that this planet is so dark that it can't be seen hardly. That it doesn't reflect light very very well. Well, in about 2004, somewhere around that time period, we found a new moon that was orbiting Jupiter. That was always there, that no one could really see because it didn't reflect light well. It was so dark that over 150 years to 200 years, no one saw it. That looked at Jupiter, almost every day. They never saw it. So can this be so dark? Yes, that is one of the possibilities. And the other thing is there technology that could block it? Well, there's YouTube videos that shows lasers are able to cloak an object. And Reagan had put lasers in space, and they have multiple uses. One of them that they remember his speech at the UN where he made it sound like it was an alien invasion almost. He said, like, if we had an outside threat where we put our differences aside and come together to he was talking about this planet.
Yeah, that was always my question, Gill. Like when we're talking about space defense or whatnot, because I bring on Alana Freeland. We're going to bring her back on. We'll talk more about space defense. Is that angle being used? A threat of war with Russia or whatever other country, just as a means to get this system up there in space, so we can actually deal with the Planet X system as opposed to another country, if that makes sense.
I think there's multiple scenarios. It's more than one. They'd like it to be just one, but our enemies would like it to be more than one. They could see this as an advantage to take us over. So they could, there's different. I think there's different hands that are being played at the same time. So I don't think one scenario lines up with everything that I'm seeing.
Another area, Gill, that has popped up in the past few weeks has been the number of lightning storms. So these crazy storms that we're seeing. We just recently had one roll through Alberta, which bolted strikes of lightning every few seconds, which scared the bejesus out of all kinds of people up there in Alberta area. But then also we had Poland, which killed, there was lightning strikes that killed 12 people. Atlanta, the PGA Tour Golf. We've got recorded 220 sheep dead in Nepal. These lightning storms, I mean, wind and water is a part of the Planet X system that's probably not talked about enough. And again, from our perspective, Gill, there's this one Catholic mystic that talks about the storms being so horrific at a certain point that the lightning and thunder are going to cause people to die. I mean, not actually just strike them and kill them, but just actually being a part of that little storm or whatever, it's going to cause people to die. It's going to be that bad. Talk to us a little bit more.
Well, sheep have that tendency. If you shock them too bad, they will die. There's certain animals on Earth you can't shock them. Just like fish, certain fish, you drop them into water that's too much of a drastic temperature, you shock them, they die. Well, it's the same thing. If you had a lightning bolt that hit close to, it shocked some of the sheep, it electrocuted some of the sheep maybe, or if it just came close enough, yeah, they'll just flop over dead. For human beings, yeah. When the two planets get close to each other, this thing's going to thread the needle between the moon and Earth. There's certain reasons why I say that. There's scriptural reasons. There's other things. And it's happened before in the past. We have direct evidence on Earth of plasma strikes. The Eye of the Sahara in Africa, you can look it up. Anybody looks at it. That Eye of the Sahara is 30 miles across. It's a circular shaped carving that's 30 miles across. That is not concave. It's not a meteor impact. That's a plasma crater. You see ridges. There's multiple ridges in there, which is a helical core. That's what lightning is. It's a helical core that spins like a tornado. And it's eroded 300 foot of the mountain range down into the ground and carved it out. It vaporized it. This is where you have this old ancient story of the Greeks and the Romans where Zeus threw lightning bolts that dissolved mountains. This happened around Hezekiah's time when Earth tilted. Earth was dragged outward slightly just a little bit, and that's where all calendars globally changed from 360-day year to 365 and a quarter day year. Something took place around 700 BC. It was actually 689 or something like that, the actual date. And because we have like over 30 different civilizations that change their calendar within the next 5 years. Because if you're over a week off per year, after the 4th year, you're a month off on your growing season. People can starve. So they had to change the calendar then. So, and we have ancient observatories that go all the way back to Joseph time of Egypt. And the oldest one in Europe is in Gothic, Germany. Well, these observatories will put these big stones where you knew the sun was at certain points of the year. And when the sun lines up, when the shadow lines up with the center, with the center post, that you can count the days in a year. And you know when the equinox is, because the shadow is equal in everything. So they knew how long a year was, and they had to change their calendars. That's going to happen again, where our calendar year is going to change to 364 day a year later on, because it's the second event when it hits Earth is going to push us slightly closer to Earth, and that's Enoch's calendar, 364 day year.
Another area, Gill, that I have taken up and been following here over the past week ties in with Catholic prophecy, and I would say common sense for anyone who studies Planet X. Listen to a few of these headlines. Rotten egg odor advisory for the Salton Sea is now extended. That's out there on the West Coast. And then just one more here, if I could. Horseshoe Lake in Mammoth Mountain area is full of killer gas. Now, why would I be talking about that? Is because in Catholic end time prophecy, we have various holy seers, if you will, one of which was called Sister Gianna the Nativity. Listen to this short little blurb here. She says, as well as I see that on earth will be shaken in different places by frightful earthquakes, I see the whole mountains cracking and splitting with a terrible din. Only too happy will be one of those who can escape with no more than a fright. But no, I see out of this the gaping mountains whirlwinds of smoke, sulfur, and tar, which reduce to cinders entire towns. We have to take into consideration these fissures are opening up poisonous gases, and we're seeing more and more of these reports. Ecuador, the two that I mentioned recently. This is something we don't take into consideration too often, I don't think, Gil.
Well, I can tell you, drilling. Remember, I have a background of working in the oil and gas industry. Whenever you say rotten eggs smell around the oil field, uh, we get a little worried because if that might be a indicator for something called hydrogen sulfide. And if you ever do smell it, you're already dead, pretty much. It's pretty toxic.
Yeah.
So anytime you tell me that they're smelling something, obviously it's not that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to. Witnesses wouldn't be able to report it very, very well. But either that or they have a gas main leak, which I don't think is that because it's by a lake.
Right. That would
The
make sense.
the oil companies purposely put in that odor in natural gas because methane doesn't have an odor. So they actually add that odor to where people can smell a leak. So if it's in the town, it would be different. But if it's by a lake out there, you're looking at Mother Nature. These are deep cavities underground where this gas are coming up. That means you have new fissures that are opening up.
Mm-hmm.
That you won't. I don't think you'd find that type of odor from bubbles at the bottom of a lake, being shaken and coming up. You wouldn't have that. Now's the time. If you ever decided to move off of the West Coast,
Right.
I would suggest leaving.
I've been saying it now for a while, Gil. I don't know what more it's going to take for some people, but I don't know. Well, I mean, what's the common response when you tell people this? And I would say more or less, our timelines kind of mesh. Why aren't people taking initiative and leaving the areas which are obviously highly volatile? Another area that I've said is not good, and I'm sure you as well. Florida. I mean, I see Florida going completely underwater. Now we've got Hurricane Dorian, down in that area, causing a water world. Well, why
Well,
aren't people responding?
that's the easy answer because most people haven't been through a serious disaster before. Anybody who's been through a serious will move. Anybody that's been through a major hurricane will move. Anybody that's been through an actual major earthquake, if they have any brains between their ears, they know. They see the signs. They recognize. But people who haven't, still in the days, just like it's the movies, and it's not going to happen to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I have nothing to worry about. I don't need to prepare, and the government's going to be taking care of me. Well, there's going to be a time in the near future, probably this next year, probably around after March, you're going to see a lot of global economic problems where they collapse.
Yeah, I was hoping.
And the government will not have the finances to help people in a disaster. So you have to have your own disaster plan, a tent, stove, sleeping bags, because it can happen to anybody, anywhere in the United States or anybody in any country. You have to have your own emergency plan if you're hit by a disaster and a certain amount of rations. That's just good sense in the times we're living in. But who says that people have a certain amount of common sense or even put their brain in gear? I mean, I'm very disappointed in what I'm seeing and hearing from people because their education level so low and their ability to read the signs
Yes.
is so weak.
Yes, I agree with you. People cannot read the signs. And I'm glad you brought up economics because I was hoping we could break that down a little bit in the last 5 minutes or so that we have. I've had on all the top economists from around the world, some indicating, we've got some time before the collapse. They might say reset, whatever you want to say. I've had others say it could be by month's end, like by the end of this month, although I personally don't see it that way. But then we've got 1/3 of the top executives around the world saying we will definitely be in a recession by 2021. What is some of the latest that you're seeing coming out of the government in conjunction with all of the geoengineering, the flooding, killing off farming in the Midwest? I mean, food prices are seemingly about to soar. So talk to us a little bit more about that, economically speaking, because I've been on record as saying that's the next really major thing. Once you see that happen, man, you know the worst of the worst can't be too far behind it as it relates to natural disasters.
The government is hiding the results from the farming thing. And the question is, how do you know that, Gill? Well, as a friend of mine, we've been searching because the data that they're reporting doesn't seem to match what we're visually seeing. And what it comes out is that there's another way of calculating this. It's called a GDD, growing degree day of crops. And our crops are anywhere between 16% to 25% behind the curve on their growing time. That means we have 16 to 25% lack of a growing season. That means some of these crops will not reach maturity. They were planted late, or their yield is going to be low. 25% on some of the states. These are state figures, and they're not reporting that. After this coming harvest season, you can expect food prices to go up. Obviously, the government's pumping a little money in it, keeping the prices low at the moment. But at one point, but I'd say about March, what concerns me the most is mid-March. If the demographics tells me that Russia has to fight a war within the next 3 years.
I agree.
They don't have the population, the young people to fight one after that. So they're vulnerable. They have to reconquer the ex-Soviet states and conquer 7 passes. Because if Europe goes back to the old way of doing things, of conquering for resources, which that's when America stops being the world policeman, that's what the countries are going to go back to, because they can't afford to keep a trade deal. That means they're going to have to go back to colonizing and conquering other countries' minerals. First mineral on the list is oil. And where would they turn to? If the Middle East is running, at least Saudi Arabia is running out of oil, they would be turning to someone closer, which would be Russia, especially if their economy is going to be collapsing. So Russia has to do something before that happens. Because once your population dwindles, you don't have enough working force to support the elderly and the tax structure, your banking system fails, then the government fails.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you, Gil. It's in Catholic prophecy that Russia attacks America, overruns Europe. I've been saying this now when I do media appearances. We're expecting that, and I would say, yeah, about 3 years, give or take. I would be shocked if Russia didn't
I would
attack us.
shorten that to this March.
Wow.
Remember, for Russia, I don't think Russia's. I don't believe. I'm hoping not. I'm wishing for the best that America or Russia are trying to do not put nukes on their territory. That I feel sorry for a surrogate war that's in between. A small, in some other country. But if someone drops a nuke on the other person's property, then it's all out on each country. So if they do tactical nukes in these other countries to whatever they got to do to stop these battles, because there's not going to be enough trained personnel to go head to head for them to stop the equipment. So Russia would need a entire warm season period to do the conquering that they need. Russia's winter is usually over on an average winter mid-March. So with this climate change patterns, we don't know if that's going to be a warm winter or a severe winter coming up, or it lasts longer. Watch March. As soon as winter's over, that's where our biggest threat is going to come. That's when Russia's going to give the okay for Iran to do whatever it wants, because then Russia can back them, because their ships are no longer frozen in. Their planes are fine. They don't have to de-ice them. They're in full working order.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it
So,
definitely makes sense. Yeah.
because China knows, damn well you don't fight a military battle, a long one, and you don't start off in the wintertime.
Mm.
You have to. Winter has to be just about over.
And getting
So
back, go ahead, Gil.
that's and we'd have to have some sort of economic problem,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be the reset of the petrodollar. The
Mm.
the dissolved part of the petrodollar. That's when we're the weakest, and we're getting there. When we get to March, we have both of those going together. That would be the weakest point.
Mm.
Trump's aware of this, and he's very well putting his guns up, ready. As long as they don't attack, that's fine. But we have contracts to protect our allies. Somebody's going to start something somewhere.
Yeah, and in addition to this, we're seeing an awful lot of mark of the beast, facial recognition type of news as well. They want to try to get everyone into this one world socialist economy. They've got to collapse the system entirely in order for that to happen. It only makes sense. So we've got a dangerous concoction here between rising food prices, but then also these natural disasters happening. Which is also dislocating a lot of people, Gil. It's not often talked about, but I mean, obviously, if your home is flooded out along the coastline area, you got to go somewhere else. And this is where the conversation of New World Order smart cities come into place and FEMA camps. It's crazy times, Gil. It truly is. We're just about out of time, Gil. So please finish off this podcast with some parting words on anything you'd like, and then do some shameless self-promotion time. And look for Gil next month, October the 8th. We're hoping to do a video presentation, so look for that as well. But Gil,
Yep.
please do finish this out.
Well, just want to give a word of leave on a positive note.
Good.
I actually believe that Trump has a plan economically, and that I think we'll see the results by Thanksgiving. Very big results. Remember where he put that poster out? Sanctions are coming on November 5th. Okay. Remember he did that in January. He was talking about November 5th of this year. I won't say what I think that means, but by Thanksgiving, I think financially, many of us will have a significant turnaround, and that will help the retailers throughout the next 1 month period of the greatest shopping spree, where retailers are out of debt. So he's boosting their revenue streams tremendously in the retail and in the public before the collapse of the petrodollar happens, and we have 30%, 15 to 30% of our dollars are overseas. The more severe that overseas countries are, the more dollars that they need at the moment. So that's causing greater stress. But once this reset happens, those petrodollars are coming back. And you're going to go to about 200 to 300% inflation. Remember where the Bible says you work all day for your food, basically. Trump will freeze the banking system where they can't foreclose on you until he gets through this period where he can reset the economy. Then the dollar, when he pegs the dollar to gold and he pays off part of the debt, I'd say maybe half to a quarter, you're looking at a dollar that's 2 to 3 times stronger than what it is now. So that'll be a benefit to everybody, but there's going to be a little rough time. And that's where we're most likely to be hit by war, by our enemies, is that period of weakness right in that small point. And that's where Trump is building a firewall on our trade and our weapons for us not to be attacked during that. A lot of people are playing checkers, and Trump is playing chess. He's quite a few steps ahead of them, and he knows some of their next moves. and that's a good thing.
Well, Gil, we always appreciate you coming on the show, sir. Again, folks, make sure you get over to his website. Mention your website again, Gil, and the YouTube, if you would, before we let you go.
Well, anybody wants some free graphics that shows you where it passed in the past, 14 times in biblical records, and another 5 secular. They match up with artifacts that I show. You can go to planet7x.net. At the bottom of the website is a Google Drive link that you can click on, and you can download the PDF book for free. And it shows you all the graphics. Then if you want to see videos and other interviews, you go to YouTube, Planet 7X. You're going to see me standing by my telescope. You go there, and you can look at some of the older. If you want to see a presentation kind of present, which we will also do together, but there's some 3-hour videos that you can break down into smaller that gives you that I go through every one of the slides. Today we couldn't do it because I have a brand new computer because my old one fried, and for some reason the video is not syncing with the Skype, and so we couldn't do a video interview today.
Well, we'll get that done. We'll get that done on October the 8th. And folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to TradCatKnight special guest exclusive podcast for this September the 5th, 2019. Until next time, stay safe and God bless.